Hello, parents, guardians, students, and staff. I'm John Cabral, Superintendent of Taunton Public Schools. We wanted to take a moment to make everyone aware that the Taunton Public Schools continues to make progress with our planning for the opening of the 2020-2021 school year. As stated in the previous communication, our 7 task force groups continue to meet regularly utilizing the recommendations from the Center for Disease Control and guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Their input and dedication to the Taunton Public Schools has been instrumental in the development of our reentry plan. We are not naive and recognize that any decision made will not receive 100% approval of the entire community. However, by communicating our intentions early, we hope families will begin taking the steps needed to arrange for childcare. We plan to provide families needing childcare with several options in the coming weeks. As was presented in the preliminary reopening plan authorized to be submitted to DESE, we will begin the year using a phased-in hybrid learning approach to educate students throughout our school system. Similar to the way in which Massachusetts reopened, this means the school year will start remotely for all students except for our high-needs special education students who will be able to return in person. A hybrid learning model will be implemented at a later phase based on our assessment of the medical situation in the state. As we have stated since the decision was made to close our doors on March 13, 2020, maintaining the health and well-being of our students and staff is and will always remain paramount. A phased-in approach, despite not being ideal, will allow us to reach our ultimate goal of full in-person learning safely and following a comprehensive set of health and safety requirements that our staff have been fully trained on and have had experience in implementing. One thing we have learned since the onset of the COVID-19 outbreak is that the virus is highly unpredictable and we must remain nimble in our ability to adapt. We believe this approach will best prepare us to change on a dime should a second wave force us into complete remote learning, or should a vaccine be developed that will allow us to return to full in-person learning earlier than the anticipated start time. We believe that despite our best intentions to adhere to social distancing and the recommendations from our health officials, when students are learning in person under a hybrid or full in-person model, it will be more disruptive to the continuity of learning to close a school after in-person learning begins should an outbreak occur. As a school system, we have tried to be thoughtful and practical in addressing the COVID-19 epidemic. Ultimately, we believe to go fast, we must go slow. A phased-in hybrid approach will provide students and families the opportunity to familiarize themselves with new district technology, new learning management systems, and new learning applications. At the same time, a phased-in approach will allow us to gradually return students to our classrooms and school buses in a manner that is safe and aligned with the CDC guidelines. Though we are implementing a phased-in hybrid approach to reopening our schools, parents, guardians, and caregivers can always opt to have their child or children do full remote virtual learning. The final details of our models are still being identified. The final plan will have to be approved by the Taunton School Committee and must also be subject to the collective bargaining agreement with our unions. Though our plans are currently preliminary, we wanted to share this information so families can begin their planning. We recognize that we have provided you with an enormous amount of information, and it can be very difficult to digest. We want to break down some of the key components that we feel will help explain what learning will look like when we begin the school year, particularly in the first part of the year. It is truly our ultimate goal to have all students experience in-person learning full-time, which is our traditional school model. Unfortunately, we are not able to accommodate all students in person and still adhere to the requirements of the Control Disease Center and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the local Board of Health. Therefore, we have created what we believe is a thoughtful approach to reaching this goal that best accounts for the health and safety of all our staff and students while the pandemic is still ongoing. The school committee will be revising the calendar at an upcoming meeting to reflect the additional period of professional development, up to 10 days, authorized by the Commissioner of Education. The first day is still not finalized, but will be no later than September 16, 2020. We will communicate further when the first day of school will begin. This will be the first day for all students, be it remote or for students attending in person. Many have asked, when will you get to meet your teacher? Parents will have an opportunity to meet their child's teacher, and learn about the child's learning model and schedule prior to the first day of school, either virtually or in some cases in person, similar to our traditional open house opportunity. Specifics on how this will happen will be communicated out further. Some have asked, what is a cohort? A cohort is another name for a group and we are using this to identify who is in and out of school on what days of the week. How will the cohorts be decided? Cohort A, the majority of students in the district with the last name A through M, who will be in school 2 days a week and remote 3 days a week when we begin to implement the hybrid model. Cohort B will consist of the majority of students in the district with the last name N to Z, who will be in school 2 different days a week from the cohort A and remote 3 days a week when we begin to implement the hybrid model. Cohort C will be made up of our high-need students as identified by the State Department of Early and Secondary Education, who will be in school 4 days a week from the start of the school year. In Cohort D, those students who will be fully remote learners. Any parent may choose this option. Your child does not have to have an underlying condition or have a medical note for you to choose this option. Some have asked, will teachers be in the classroom? In our draft reopening plan, the majority of all our teachers will be teaching from their classrooms. All students will be provided with a district-issued Chromebook. Families requiring access to Wi-Fi will be provided with a hotspot that will allow students to access the internet. It is important that students utilize district-issued devices, as this will allow our IT department to provide technical support and troubleshoot potential issues. Some have asked if the transportation policy has changed. The transportation policy has not changed. However, due to the new health and safety guidelines, only students eligible to receive transportation in accordance with the policy will be transported. Transportation will not be available to those students living within the following mileage. Elementary school students, except for preschool and kindergarten students who reside within 1 mile of their school, are not eligible to receive transportation. Middle school students residing 1.5 miles within their school are not eligible to receive transportation. And lastly, high school students residing within 2 miles of Taunton High School are not eligible to receive transportation. We realize this is a very stressful time for families, students, and educators. Remember, we are all in this together and that the Taunton Public Schools is here to address your questions and concerns and provide you with support when needed. As always, please feel free to contact your child's building principal. I close. Be safe, be kind, and stay strong, Taunton. Thank you.